look at that right there. Full moon, right? Look at this hair, right? This is how you know this video is real, right? This is how you know that I'm getting up each day and doing the work on this channel, right? It's 5:39 in the morning. There's a full moon out, right? I got Ace. Ace is in the yard. You'll probably see him in a little bit, but man, I wanted to give an update kind of on the channel and what's going on and everything. And he's over there making noises. You can hear people getting up to go to work. Man, it's been super, super busy. Mother's Day, obviously, we had a lot of Mother's Day stuff. I got my wife's birthday coming up this weekend. And man, there's a lot going on. So some friends of mine, a couple of which, one's a new friend, Matt Bissonette, and another is my old drummer, Roger Carter, right? Who both have done interviews on this channel. Their band, The Squirts, is putting out a new album, right? They've got a label, and the label's finally going to put the record out and all that, man. With the way the music business is now, man, that is not an easy task, right? So I'm going to be having them, the whole band, hopefully, coming on the channel very soon. And that should be very, very interesting to, trying to think of a new way to promote a record. These days it's tough, man, because it's almost easier to get people to watch a YouTube video than it is to listen to an album. And, man, I can't think of the last time I listened to an entire album. That's just the state of where things are these days. But the reality is this, man. You know what? You've got to still keep creating music. Music is needed for film and TV. Music is needed in the world. It's a very important thing. Think about that, creating music. What a noble cause that is, right? Because here's the deal. When you get to be our age, right? When you get to be, married or, you've got a girlfriend or fiance at home or whatever, you're no longer making music to, get a date, to have women screaming at you and all that. It comes down to eventually the love of music and not the love of anything else, right? Not the love of money. Because look, man, there's very little money in music unless you're in one of these country groups that's out, touring and selling beer. What is country act doing these days? You're going out, you're playing these huge amphitheaters, you're selling beer, you're selling whiskey, you're selling old smoky moonshine and all this other stuff, right? And you're selling a lifestyle. You're selling pickup trucks and cornfields and small town America. You're singing and selling small town America to the masses, and that is a lifestyle, maybe over a music, right? Now, rock and roll sold a lifestyle, right? But we're now realizing as we get into our older life that lifestyle, man, took out a lot of our friends, took people down a very bad path, right? Not a healthy path. And, here's the thing, man. The country music thing, selling booze and smoke and this and that stuff that it sells, that's not necessarily a great pathway either. The reality is, and it's funny because, when I get in the car with my wife, she puts the country music channel on, and that's what she insists on listening to. And now me and Mia want to listen to rock when we're driving. And I can't stand the Southern drawl, like one nasally, like way that they sing. But you know what? It is what it is. It's an industry that sells music. So you know what? A lot of my friends are been in that business, and some of them are playing on Broadway, and some of them are out touring the country doing that stuff. So you know what? The fact that they're playing music and making a living in 2025, that's about all you can ask for, man. And look, man, people that don't haven't been in the Nashville studio scene, people who have never played with a country artist, they look down on, playing on a Winona Judd album or playing on a Taylor Swift record. All right, so Ace is going to join us for the rest of this video, right? Ace was just blowing his nose. And that is the reality of making videos with a family, right? You've got all of this stuff, right? You've got all of these guys doing all this trickery and fakery, and here's the deal, man. People want reality. People want a cute little face like this. And you know what? This is probably the best part of the video, is Ace down there, making a ruckus. And he's made several ruckuses while I've been trying to film this video, and even get on a topic that we can all relate to. But here's the deal, man. And like I was saying before, people often rag on country artists and people that record on country sessions, and they think it's easy, and it's absolutely not, right? I try to explain this to people, but getting a page with a bunch of numbers on it, right? And hearing the demo, and the demo sucks. The demo is terrible. The song has nothing. It's just a handful of chord changes. They're not even like exotic chord changes. There's usually no sevens on the chords. There's no room for any, chromaticism. It is what it is. But these people that are doing these sessions, they've got to listen to the song and immediately go in the other room and come up with a creative part. And that is not an easy thing. Look, man, it's not easy for me to play guitar and eliminate all the chromaticism in lines. How do you play long lines? Maybe that's why country guitar players, develop that chicken picking style with the open strings and stuff. Because for me, when I was taught, playing guitar coming up, open strings were no, right? And maybe that's why I'm not like the greatest country guitar player in the world, because I just don't even think about playing open strings. Because if you think about it, learning from the jazz angle of playing guitar, open strings, they're twangy, they're sometimes uncontrollable, all these things. And if you're trying to get a nice, even, mellow tone, an open string is that jarring pop, but that's the very thing that makes that style of country guitar sound like the way it sounds, is the use of the open strings and the kind of banjo style and all that. But man, I can't, when I listen to the country stuff that my wife puts on the radio, I don't have any problem with the music. I don't have any problem with what's being played on the tracks. I just don't particularly care for the accent and the over nasally type vocal. But the music is all played well. The parts all sound good. It all makes sense musically. And these guys are talented, man. If you think it's easy, here's what I'd love to do. I would love to get all the guys that are on the internet ragging on country session players. I'd love to get them in and book a Nashville country session, right? And hire them to play on it. I would love to get some of these guys, and they know who they are. I don't have to call people out. But I would love to take them in a room, play them a completely crappy demo, right? And then give them a page with a bunch of numbers on it and say, now go in the other room and play a perfect song. And here's the deal. Give them a perfect drummer. Give them a great bass player. But let them come in with their rig, their pedal board, and make a great recording. Make it sound like a hit song. It sounds easy because there's easy chord changes, right? But look, man, there are some tricks to doing this stuff. Knowing when to use capos, knowing how to use the open strings, knowing how to create interesting voicings out of chord changes that are not interesting at all. That is a huge part of it, and why I preached over and over again, man. Because look, I was one of those guys when I moved to Nashville, and when I first moved to Nashville, things were different in '94. But here's the deal. The guitar sounds were smaller then. They were cleaner then. It was a little bit different vibe in the early 90s country, right? But here's the deal. That is not easy to do, man. And because I got to experience it, because I got to be in a situation where I would show up and here's this thing, and here's the thing, man. As far as number charts, I much prefer a lead sheet with chord changes written over it and maybe some rhythmic notation, and all that. I've never been a guy that 110% got all the number system stuff, right? I knew what diamonds meant. I knew that meant I just strum a chord and let it hold for 4 beats or whatever. But it's not easy, man. It's not easy. And of course you got to use your ears. And for me, if once I got in the room, because it's confusing, it's like I talked to one of our subscribers, Nikos, who has a channel. I did a blog about him and explaining that, if the song is in A minor, it's not written as 1 minor. It might be written as 6. The A minor could be written as 6, so the first chord on the page would be 6. Meaning the song is in the key of C, right? What if the song's in the key of G and that A minor is a Dorian thing, right? And this information isn't really given to you by this number system. You kind of have to use your ear, and if it says, let's say 2 and then 5, 7, right? And then 1, then you would know, okay, this is a Dorian type thing. But these type of things, a Dorian type song is not usually something you hear in country music. It's usually all kind of based off major type tonalities, and that's the reality of it. But man, it's not easy having seconds to get, to figure out what you're going to play and play something cool. I don't care if the song's easy. I don't care if you don't like the artist. And look, like I said, I'm not a fan of the music, but man, if you're saying it's easy, then you haven't done it. You haven't been there. You haven't done it. And I'm sure people would rag on the stuff that I played on, and it's not cool enough, and it's not hip enough, and all that other stuff. And I frankly don't give 2 shits what anybody thinks about it, because you get the calls that you get in life. You get the shots that you get. And I didn't have a choice of who I played with. I didn't have a choice of, getting to, oh, would you like to play with this artist? Would you like to play with, no, you get the calls that you get, and you either say no or you say yes. And you get further in life by saying yes. You get further in life by going, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. Now I could have not gone out with the last country artist that I went on the road with, and I could have stayed with the oldies act that I was touring with, that's still touring to this day. And in fact, in some ways, the oldies act might be in better shape because, things that happen, right? Things that happen. The touring artist was consistently playing, right? Yes, there would be periods where, and we don't have a lot on the books. That's normal, right? But he's still out there touring. And I knew when I took that opportunity, I knew, man, I'm on a gig right now where as long as I show up and do my job and smile backstage and be pleasant to be around, I could do this gig as long as I want, even though the artist is much older. Even though the artist is much older, I could continue on this road. And I knew that going in. Because here's a point I've made before, but if you haven't heard it, if you get a call to go on a gig, you get a call to go play in a band or tour with an artist or whatever, look at several years of performance on YouTube. Is it the same band members for years and years? Or is there a lot of turnover? Are they keeping the same band members for years? Or is it, wait a minute, who's this guy and who's this guy and who's that guy? And I knew when I made the jump that there was a lot of turnover. I knew that, this gig might be a stressful situation, or who knows what's going on. You don't know. Look, man, some of those tours, it'd be like going on tour with a nunnery and a bunch of priests, right? And then some of the tours are wild and off the chain. And you don't really know what a situation is like till you get into it. You don't really know who you're going out with until you're out there doing it and seeing what's going on. So you have to take a chance, right? And I took a chance. I could still be out there every year, even moving down here to Florida, because all we did was fly dates, go to the airport, fly to the gig, fly home, right? And I could still be doing those gigs now. In fact, now that I'm in Florida, it would be easy because half the gigs we would do, or at least a third of the gigs might be in Florida already, playing the villages and playing all these, retirement type places and stuff like that. But here's the deal, man. Being youngish, and playing with an oldies act, it's the same thing if you were playing with a legacy act as a country artist. As a young player, you might get the call to say, play with, I don't know, a Tracy Lawrence or something like that. And man, that's a good gig. That's a good gig. But it's not as big a gig as playing with Morgan Wallen or playing with Kane Brown or, I don't know, whoever's hot now, right? Whoever the hot headline Jelly Roll. Imagine playing, or Luke Combs, playing with those guys that are at the top of the charts right now. Those are the big gigs. Those are the gigs that everybody wants. That's what we used to call the redneck lottery. Getting a gig like that, and all of a sudden they've got multiple buses, and you maybe have your own guitar tech and all this stuff. And that's what everybody wants, the big gig, right? A lot of those guys, man, I think Luke Combs, I think a lot of his guys were guys he grew up with. I don't know. I know a guy that's working for Luke Combs right now. Maybe I could ask him, but here's the deal, man. If you see there's a lot of turnover and you're leaving a gig, a legacy gig, that's solid and guaranteed work, each year, you take a risk. You take a risk if you stay with the legacy act. Maybe something happens to him. Maybe he has a stroke. Maybe he has a heart attack. Maybe his wife doesn't want him on the road anymore. And you're on that gig and you passed by an opportunity to jump on another train. Then instead of staying with the legacy act, when you take a chance by getting in a gig that's a higher level gig, younger audience, all of those things, but there's a lot of turnover. You're taking a chance that you're going to jump on something. You're going to ride it for a while, or ride it as long as you can, and then it's going to end. But here's the deal, man. I could have stayed with the Oldies Act. I could have stayed out there doing that, right? But nothing different would have happened. Nothing would, we weren't going to all of a sudden put out an album and light up the world. We weren't going to all of a sudden get a song on the charts when you haven't had a song since the late 60s, on the charts. So that's not going to happen, right? So you have to take a chance, right? And I took a chance, and it pretty much played out exactly how I thought it would. There were a lot of amazing moments. There were, playing arenas, I played Jacksonville where the Jaguars played football, for Christ's sakes. And there were a lot of amazing moments, and getting to do and play on legitimate Nashville sessions with Darius Rucker on track, Keith Urban on the track, let's see who, John Michael Montgomery on a track, Kix Brooks on a track, who else? Jake Owen on a track. All of these guys I can put on my resume because I did it. I played on songs. They're on the song. I'm on the song. And that's a part of history. Maybe 10 years from now or 20 years from now, and I'm not here on earth, somebody might be listening to one of those songs that I played on. That's just reality. And if I hadn't have taken that chance of getting into a situation where I know, look, man, the closer to the fire you get, the better chance you get burned, right? But in order to really get something cooking, man, sometimes you got to get close to that fire, and you got to take a chance. You got to take a chance knowing that a situation is volatile, knowing that, you might not last long out there. And look, man, for me, being 40 some years old and being out there doing that, man, that was hard, dude, because it was that push, man, to try. You had the artist I was out with had 2 number 1 songs. Now they weren't the versions that he recorded, but he had written 2 number 1 songs. They're at the chart. And so when you're playing those songs live, man, everybody in the crowd knows it. And they also know that you are the writer of the song. So that's a huge moment in time. I'm singing in an arena, singing a number 1 song. That is an opportunity that most people never get to do, never get to go play an arena and do that. And if I'd have stayed where I was in that comfortable place, playing those oldie gigs, playing at the Villages, we used to joke, and even the older guys in the band, I would say, it's all blue hairs out there. I remember this lady coming backstage, and I've talked about this before, but she come backstage. Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's all old people out there. That's the gig. That's the gig. It is what it is. I don't care. I'm here to make money. Did I think it was all going to be supermodels out there when I'm playing with an artist from the 60s? No, it is what it is. Every gig has its pluses and positives. The legacy act, the oldies act, man, they might be happy to get a good player that can stay on the gig, because those acts tend to get people to jump ship. A lot of people tend to jump ship, especially younger guys. A lot of times your first gig, it might be an act like that. Your first road gig might be playing with a legacy artist, right? Because they're going to give you a chance. And once you prove yourself on that legacy act, and then you meet other players out on the road, because look, those legacy acts will play in the middle of the day on some of those huge festivals, right? These huge country festivals. So you're going to meet guys that play with the big stars. You're going to make friends with people out there, out on the road. You're going to make connections that might mean you're able to jump ship at some point, jump onto a bigger ship. If you're a star, if you're a great sideman and you look great and you sound great, people are going to take notice. And you might have an opportunity to go somewhere else. starting out with a legacy act, man. That's where a lot of guys start out. That's where a lot of guys start out in the business. And you can make the choice that you're going to stay with this legacy artist, hoping that, hope that they're taking good care of themselves. Because, man, if you're playing with an artist that's not taking good care of themselves, you have to question the longevity. But, man, everything in life is a crapshoot. Do I go left? Do I go right? That's the reality, man. You don't really know. You don't know the answers. You're going to have to take chances, right? You're going to have to take chances in life and hope for the best. That's what it's all about. It's just like this channel, man. I get up each day, I shoot a video, I work my butt off, and I hope for the best. And man, I'm just thankful that everybody tunes in, and I hope this message has helped somebody out there. Thanks for watching.